In January 1919, a wave of molasses moved through the streets of Boston at 35 miles an hour and killed 21 people. That sentence sounds like a joke. It gets told like one. A funny old disaster, sticky and absurd, the kind of thing you read out to somebody at a bar. It was not funny at all. And the reason those people died is not the reason you would guess. It is not that they drowned in syrup. It is that molasses does something that almost no other liquid does. And a group of physicists at Harvard only worked out exactly what in 2016, 97 years after it happened. Start with the tank. It stood on the waterfront in the North End, 50 feet tall and 90 feet across. It held 2.3 million gallons. The company that owned it was the United States Industrial Alcohol Company. And it is worth being clear about what the molasses was for, because it was not for cake. Molasses ferments into ethanol. Ethanol goes into liquor, but it also goes into munitions. This was the tail end of the First World War. That tank was industrial feedstock. The man who oversaw its construction was Arthur Jell, the company's treasurer. Not an engineer, he had no architectural or engineering experience whatsoever. He was under pressure to have the tank ready for an incoming shipment, and he made a decision that later became the center of everything. Before putting it into service, he did not properly test it. He put water in it, but not enough water to reveal whether it would hold. The tank leaked from the beginning. Not a little. It leaked so badly that people in the neighborhood came and collected the molasses that ran out of it, and took it home. The company's response to a structure visibly leaking its contents onto a public street was to have it painted brown. Sit with that for a second, not repaired. Painted. Painted the same color as the thing coming out of it, so that you could no longer see it coming out. That is not an accident waiting to happen. That is an accident being deliberately made harder to see. The 15th of January, 1919 was unusually warm for a Boston winter. The temperature had climbed above 40 degrees Fahrenheit after several days of hard cold. The day before, a ship had delivered a fresh load of molasses, warm to make it flow more easily during transfer, and it had gone into a tank that was already close to full. At around 12:30 in the afternoon, the tank came apart. Witnesses described a sound like a machine gun. That was the rivets going. What came out was not a puddle spreading, it was a wall. It was about 25 feet high at the front, and it moved at roughly 35 miles an hour. That is faster than you can run. It is faster than most people can react. It took an elevated railway support off its footings, it moved buildings off their foundations. It picked up a firehouse and pushed it. 21 people were killed. About 150 were injured. And now the part that the jokes always miss. Why does a slow liquid move at 35 miles an hour? Molasses is roughly 1.5 times as dense as water, and something like 4,000 times as viscous. Intuitively, it should ooze. It should not sprint. The answer is that molasses is not a normal fluid. It is what is called non-Newtonian. Its thickness is not fixed. It changes depending on what is being done to it. Molasses shear thins. Push it hard enough, and it gets runnier. So at the moment the tank burst, with 2.3 million gallons behind it shoving, the molasses became far more liquid than it is when it sits in a jar, and it ran like water. That is the first half. The second half is the one that killed people. In 2016, a team led by Nicole Sharp presented work at the American Physical Society's Fluid Dynamics meeting. A Harvard graduate student, Jordan Kennedy, ran a rheological survey of blackstrap molasses, measuring how its flow properties change with temperature. They also flooded a scale model of the neighborhood with cold corn syrup. And what they established is that as the molasses spread out through the streets, it cooled fast. It had come out of the tank warm, and it was pouring into a January afternoon in Boston, thinning as it spread and losing heat the whole way. As it cooled, and as the shove behind it stopped, the viscosity came back, dramatically. So the substance behaved like a flash flood on impact, and like quicksand about a minute later. People survived the wave. They were not killed by the impact. They were held in place while the material around their chests and their faces stiffened, and rescuers could not pull them out fast enough, and they suffocated. That is what actually happened in the North End. It is not a funny story. It is one of the more horrible ways a person can die. The search for the dead ran for 4 days. Part of the reason it took that long is the same physics. Rescuers were working in a material that resisted them, in the dark, in January, and many of the people they found were so completely covered that they were hard to recognize. Some of the bodies were never in the wreckage at all. They had been carried out into Boston Harbor, and they were recovered 3 and 4 months later. The cleanup took weeks in the immediate area, and several hundred people worked on it. They brought in a fireboat and washed the streets down with salt water, because fresh water did not shift it. They spread sand to soak up what was left. and then the city did the rest of the spreading on its own. Rescuers and cleanup crews and people who came to look walked it out of the north end on their boots. It went onto subway platforms, onto the seats of trains and streetcars, into the handsets of public telephones, into people's houses. One account put it simply: everything that a Bostonian touched was sticky. The harbor ran brown until the summer, and residents said for decades afterwards that on hot days, that part of the city still smelled of molasses. The company's defense was that anarchists had blown the tank up. That was not a random excuse. There were real anarchist bombings in that period, and it was the most plausible thing they could reach for. It did not work. 119 residents brought what became a class action. It ran for years. A court-appointed auditor, Hugh Ogden, took 3 years of hearings and found the company responsible. The steel was about half as thick as it should have been for a tank that size. It lacked manganese, which made it brittle. The rivet holes were flawed, and the cracks had started there. The settlement came to around $628,000, which is somewhere near $12 million today, roughly $7,000 for each person killed. Here is why this case is still taught. Before this, in a great deal of American construction, a company could put up a large structure on private land, largely on its own say-so. The person signing off on that tank was a treasurer who could not have checked the maths if he had wanted to. Afterwards, that got much harder. The case is one of the standard reference points in the argument for requiring that certified engineers sign off on structural work, and for the inspections and permits that go with it. Every large tank you drive past, every stamped drawing, sits downstream of arguments that this disaster made impossible to keep losing. So the next time somebody tells you the funny one about the molasses flood, you can tell them the real one. A treasurer skipped the test. The tank leaked for 3 years, and they painted it. And 21 people died in a substance that turned solid around them while they were still alive.